As I swirled honey into my tea, the phone began to ring. The caller ID showed a private number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but on impulse, I answered. "Ms. Mercer," came a man's voice. "This is Tyler Goodman from Summit Crest Lending. I'm reaching out about the missed payment concerning the 47 Cedar Hill Lane property." I paused, confused. "Excuse me, what property?" I asked. The pause on his end lingered uncomfortably. "The home you're co-listed on with Marissa Mercer." An icy dread settled over me. Marissa. My sister. Marissa Mercer. I withdrew the phone from my ear for a moment, double-checking the caller history, the inbound number, and the precise time. Every detail. "This isn't a scam," I murmured to myself. "There has to be some error. I've never bought a house," I said. He proceeded to state the address. The street name rang a faint bell in my mind. Suddenly it dawned on me. It was the townhouse my sister had bragged about at Christmas the previous year, the one she claimed Robert Langdon, her boyfriend's uncle, had helped her purchase. The person on the phone continued explaining about overdue fees and the risk to my credit, but I'd stopped paying attention. My fingers felt numb because I knew I'd never put my name on anything. I hadn't signed a single document. I wasn't even present for any of it. Once the call finished, I remained seated in my living room, gazing blankly and mentally replaying each family meal and every offhand remark. Had I given my consent at any point? Absolutely not. But then a memory surfaced. In February, when I visited home for my father's birthday, I had left my tote bag in the kitchen while I helped arrange the table. Inside that bag were my tax documents and my page of signatures. There was no way they would, or even could, have done it, yet deep down I already realized they had. The following afternoon, I headed to Summit Crest Lending in my professional pumps, trying to look as composed as possible. On the other side of the glass, a friendly woman named Jenna found my file. Sure enough, it lists you as co-borrower, with your signature dated February 22nd. "That's yours, correct?" she asked, angling the monitor in my direction. My name appeared on the document. The angle and sharpness were almost flawless, but still not exactly right. The tail of the Y was raised too high, and they overlooked the fact that I never abbreviate my middle name on anything official. What I saw was clearly a fake, an impressive one, most likely lifted from some paper I had signed years before. I turned to her and asked, "Could I look at the entire file?" There was a moment's pause before she replied, "You're listed on the mortgage, so yes." It took me 20 minutes and a fresh legal pad to untangle what had happened. Ownership of the house stood in my sister's name, although the loan had been co-signed by me, added after the fact, through extra documents. All of this was certified by the notary, a person I'd never heard of named Trevor Blanchard. I snapped a picture of the paperwork, making sure to capture Trevor Blanchard's seal and the date. Then I asked the one question that finally broke my composure. "What's the outstanding balance?" Jenna Thorne glanced at her monitor. $521 to $80. My chest felt like it was closing. I left that office in a complete haze. My signature wasn't just on documents. It now carried real liability. All those warm family gatherings, the birthday parties I paid for, the lingering guilt about visiting less often, they stopped being simple recollections and became obvious forms of manipulation. I drove straight to the Mercer family home. My mother was in the yard, tending to her roses with the sort of meticulous, almost performative attention only she could give. "Evelyn!" she exclaimed, clearly startled. "You really should have let us know you were coming." I stayed stone-faced. "Can we have a conversation?" she asked. She brought me into the kitchen and poured us sweet tea, as if we were just having a casual chat. I remained standing. "I'm aware of the mortgage," I blurted, my voice flat. I never agreed to anything, but my name was added to a loan. She gave a quick blink, then actually chuckled. "Oh, sweetheart, it's just paperwork," she said, laughing. You're so organized with money. Of course you would have stepped up. My pulse raced in my ears. I said, "You falsified my signature." She made no effort to refute it. Instead, she just cocked her head. I remembered leaving my documents out that afternoon. At the time, I wondered, does it really matter? You're always supporting the family anyway. That was when my father, Howard Mercer, ambled in, gently massaging his neck. "Your sister needed a hand, that's all," he said. "You earn more than she does." I faced him squarely. What happened was against the law. My father couldn't meet my eyes and turned away. At that moment, my sister came downstairs wearing yoga pants and a face full of makeup. She showed no reaction, just calmly took a sip from her oat milk latte. Marissa gave a well-rehearsed shrug and said, "You told me it was all right. Don't tell me you're changing your position now." I fixed my gaze on my sister. "I never made you that promise." Marissa just grinned, as if she were watching a comedy show. "Then why are you so easy to take advantage of?" she asked. Samuel Aldridge's office was wedged between a laundromat and a nail studio. There was no elaborate advertisement, only a modest brass plate outside. The words read, "Samuel Aldridge, real property attorney." He reminded me of an elderly relative who had retired. His shirt sleeves were cuffed. His thick glasses and unfashionable tie gave him a dated look as he welcomed me in with, "Clinton, Ms. Mercer," and ushered me through the door. After confirming that I was referring to my name appearing on a mortgage without my agreement, I handed over the paperwork. Samuel Aldridge examined the documents at a measured pace, gently humming as though he were deciphering a puzzle. He paused for quite some time before remarking, "You're not the first, but perhaps the most perceptive to show up before the property is lost." I stayed silent, offering no response. Samuel leaned back in his chair and asked, "What is it you want from me? Would I prefer to see them prosecuted, or did I want the authority?" I raised my eyes to the ceiling, recalling my sister's self-satisfied expression, my mother's indifferent shrug, and my father's wordless stance. "Authority," I replied. A knowing, rather than warm smile crossed Samuel's face. He advised me that if I wished for that outcome, patience and thorough records would be essential. "This is not about lashing out," he said, "but about strategically asserting yourself. You're not seeking vengeance. Your aim is to reclaim what they established using your efforts." It was the first time someone had clearly stated what I hadn't been able to articulate. They didn't accidentally implicate me in their troubles. They relied on my unwavering loyalty to keep me from retaliating. Samuel Aldridge slid a notepad toward me on his desk and said, "Let's get started." Our plan was subtle. There were no dramatic arguments or confrontations on the doorstep. Instead, it began with legal documents, the exact means they had previously used against me. Samuel submitted a quitclaim deed rescission to remove my liability, but not until we completed a thorough title search. That was the moment when I came across something strange. The mortgage hadn't been transferred elsewhere. The bank was still the owner, and their patience was running out, which made them open to negotiation. With Samuel guiding me through the entire process, I created a private trust called Valley Ash Holdings and presented my proposal to the bank. We offered to settle the mortgage balance for less, paying in cash. Everything was handled quietly. No attention, no media coverage, no names attached, just finality achieved. In just 9 days, the lender agreed. Without any fanfare, the obligation became my responsibility. However, ownership of the house was still out of my hands. At this stage, Valley Ash Holdings seemed like just another investor snapping up faltering real estate. My relatives believed nothing was different. Yet beneath the surface, the snare had already closed around us. My sister had fallen behind on 3 payments. She was completely unaware that her loan had been transferred and had no idea that I was now her creditor. Samuel reviewed the final paperwork and indicated where I should sign. "Would you prefer to sign under an alias?" he asked. I declined, preferring they discover the truth when it actually counted. My motives had shifted. I was no longer focused on resolving problems. I was setting outcomes in motion. I refrained from reaching out. There was no advance notice. I simply allowed things to unfold. Marissa missed a fourth payment. After the 45 days elapsed, a notice of default from Valley Ash Holdings discreetly appeared with my signature attached to it. That Friday, my mother messaged me a picture of a charcuterie board from some wine brunch with the caption, "Wish you were here." I gazed at the message for a solid minute. The person who had forged my name was now acting as if we were the closest of friends. I sent back a smiley emoji and saved the conversation in case I ever needed the evidence. That marked the start of it all. On Monday evening, my sister, Marissa Mercer, left me a voicemail. No introduction, just, "Hey, something's up with the loan company. I think it might have been sold or something. Could you look into it on your side?" I chose not to reply. After that, I received an awkwardly formal email from my father. It was a stilted note, sounding as if he were addressing a supervisor. "If you're aware of any updates to the mortgage lender, please let us know." I worried this might impact my efforts to refinance. Was I overthinking refinancing? I sent a message to Samuel Aldridge and made myself a cup of tea. Before long, when the notice requiring them to cure or vacate landed at their door, my mother finally called. Her voice sounded fragile, tense, and obviously rehearsed. She told me they simply needed a little time. I allowed the silence to linger before I responded. I asked whether they needed time before they wrote my name down, or after. She tried to cry, but I remained unmoved. "This isn't about you," my sister insisted. "You're still our family." "No," I replied softly. "I'm now your creditor." That weekend, I got an email sent to a group from Claire Dunning, my sister's real estate agent. She tried to put the Mercer family home, which was my collateral, on the market, unaware that there were stipulations on the deed. The sale collapsed within 2 days. That was when the ultimate slight happened. My mother reached out and asked me to come for a family meal, claiming she wanted to ease the tension. I answered, "Of course, I'll bring a dessert." What I was actually planning to bring was the proof of my ownership, with Trevor Blanchard, the notary, waiting just outside in a parked car, ready for signatures that actually mattered. The dining room smelled like rosemary chicken tinged with desperation. My mother had pulled out the good china. The wine glasses were polished. Candles flickered, as if it were Christmas the previous year, but the energy felt wrong. My father barely looked at me. Marissa's smile was too tight, her eyes bouncing between me and her phone. The only thing louder than the fork scraping porcelain was the silence between sentences. I waited until the plates were cleared. Then I pulled a thin manila envelope from my bag and placed it on the table between the salt and pepper shakers. "What's this?" my mother asked, her tone too casual. "Updated documents," I replied. "For the house." My sister didn't touch it. Her fingers curled around her wine glass as if it were a life raft. My father opened it and scanned the first page, his lips moving as he read. Lorraine's voice dropped an octave. "What is this, Evelyn Mercer?" "These are purchase papers," I replied. "I hold the debt now, which means the claim belongs to me, and you have 45 days to either settle the amount or move out." Marissa Mercer let out a shrill, uneasy laugh. "You wouldn't do this. You're not allowed." I fixed my gaze on her. "It's already done." She got to her feet abruptly, sending her chair backwards. "This is a betrayal." I kept my expression calm. "No, you agreed to these terms. I just executed them more effectively." The room erupted in shouting. My father muttered about the meaning of family. My mother murmured that I was being heartless. I stood up, tucked in my chair, and set a foil-wrapped container on the counter. This is dessert. Peach cobbler. The one you always claimed I made too sweet. After that, I headed for the exit. Outside, Trevor Blanchard waited in a dark sedan with the engine running, and for the first time in ages, a smile crossed my face. I had nearly reached the door when my sister spat out her words. You always believed you were superior to us. Turning around slowly, I faced them. No, I believed I was of help to you, and I truly was. My mother stood there with her arms folded, her pearl necklace pressed close to her throat, watching me in silence. We're your parents, my mother insisted. We did what we felt was necessary. I didn't perceive it as being done for my sake. I walked toward the buffet and grabbed the folder, which they had clearly ignored. Let me break this down for you, I began. You have 3 choices. First, repay the entire mortgage amount to Valley Ash Holdings, my LLC. Secondly, vacate the Mercer family home within 45 days. Or 3, contest the matter in court, but I can promise that outcome will not be to your benefit. I hold the logs from Trevor, overlays of forged signatures, and recordings of our calls. Howard tried to jump in, but I raised my hand to stop him. This is not open for discussion. It's simply business. My sister lunged at the folder, as if by grabbing it she could undo everything with her own hands. You can't treat me this way. My career depends on this. People watched me. Then I told them, be honest. Admit how you took my sister's name to bankroll your picture-perfect life. There was just a charged stillness, an electric quiet. I slipped my hand into my bag, pulled out a new agreement, and set it squarely on the tabletop. Option 5, I stated. Sign this voluntary handover, and I'll let you lease the guest room at market price. No background checks, no guarantors. My sister just glared at the document, as though it would leap up at her. My mother's fingers shook. It was my father who eventually spoke up, asking, why are you doing any of this? I looked back into his gaze. Because you all assumed I wouldn't go through with it, I replied. You counted on me staying quiet, on my loyalty, and on the idea that I'd keep the Mercer reputation safe before I looked after myself. Leaning closer, I added, my name was treated like it was meaningless by you, but now it's the one inscribed on the deed. Trevor tapped softly at the door. There was a knock on the door. I answered, gave a slight nod, and he entered, carrying his briefcase. My mother looked as if she might be sick. My sister escaped to the hallway, grumbling under her breath. Howard eased himself into a chair, as though the weight in the room had suddenly increased. Trevor spread the paperwork across the table. Who wants to sign first? He inquired. I scanned the room, waiting to see if anyone would volunteer. When no one responded, I gathered the documents, placed them back in the envelope, and returned them to him. I told him that they would receive a call once everyone was prepared to move forward. But the truth was, that call wouldn't come. At least not right now. With that, I left, the sound of my heels echoing across the hardwood. The next evening, I sent one succinct email. The subject read, Final Filing, Valley Ash Holdings. I attached digital versions of the foreclosure documents, confirmation of the ownership transfer, audio recordings, and notarized statements. Within 24 hours, Samuel sent over a forwarded note from the Municipal Records Office confirming the property lien had been fully transferred into my name. There were no loopholes left, no appeals, and nothing more to contest. Acting as if nothing was wrong, I tried to keep my composure. Early the next week, a reporter from a local newspaper reached out to me. Ms. Mercer, we're featuring a story about fraudulent property documents, and your situation is being referenced in a training session, they explained. I refused the request for an interview. This wasn't an issue that needed public attention. It felt more like a precise move. Justice that doesn't require recognition. Meanwhile, My sister posted a cryptic message online, claiming she had been betrayed by someone who never valued tradition. I saw no need to respond. I offered no defense. When my mother tried to make me feel guilty over an email, I sent her a brief reply. She had taught me that silence is powerful. I simply figured out how to make that silence last forever. In reality, I didn't destroy them. I simply allowed them to unravel on their own, with just a little assistance, all documented in a signed paper trail they had created themselves. 4 weeks later, the house remained unoccupied. They didn't protest the eviction. They ignored my final warning and simply disappeared. My sister relocated to an apartment 3 neighborhoods west. My mother ceased all communication. My father didn't reach out, and I didn't make an effort to pursue any of them. Instead, I contacted Samuel and provided him with updated directions. We were changing the trust's name. Valley Ash Holdings would be legally known going forward as the Macmillan Legacy Foundation, honoring my grandmother, Beatrice Macmillan. She was the one my mother had removed from our family photographs. She was the person who had shown me how to reconcile a checkbook and tuck away emergency cash in her bra. She was the relative we always ignored because she didn't conform. From now on, all rental earnings from that property would support a scholarship for first-generation women pursuing finance. I was always considered reliable, seen as plain, the sibling without excitement. They assumed I would never stand up for myself. Yet in the end, their disloyalty became a legacy that felt like my fair share. Not retaliation or malice, but simple redistribution. They went ahead and used my signature without my consent, as if it were meaningless. I managed to take that sense of insignificance and turn it into something real, both in property and in principle. When I turned the key in the door of the house for the final time, I didn't experience triumph. Instead, I felt a sense of balance, as if I were finalizing a ledger that now showed nothing owed. I didn't throw a party to mark the occasion. There was no sparkling wine, no announcements online, and certainly no dramatic revelation. Instead, I moved into a modest house in a peaceful neighborhood, a bit run down, but mine alone. It wasn't elaborate or impressive, just a place of my own. I placed a basil plant by the kitchen window and began taking evening walks to relax. For enjoyment, I started reading through legal agreements. I began sleeping soundly every night. While going through some old belongings one afternoon, I came across a birthday card from 7 years ago. It was unsigned, without any message inside. There was just a plain message with no handwriting, only a typical Hallmark sentiment about being proud of who I had become. I couldn't help but laugh, not because it amused me, but because it seemed like such a fitting gesture. But I wasn't angry anymore. I had moved beyond the version of myself that depended on their acceptance. Real strength wasn't about being the most outspoken. I didn't plead, make a scene, or try to force others to see my point. I paid attention to every clause. I understood each detail of the agreement. And at the moment of decision, I wrote my name, Evelyn Mercer, and walked away on my own terms. I hadn't lost my kindness. I had gained clarity. With each discreet step, I let go of my past labels. I was the admired child, the one who fixed the money problems, the buffer for everyone's feelings. People used to call me reserved or overly serious. What I learned instead was that my quiet was actually my greatest strength. Because when I decided to act, it was in what I did, not what I said. There was no need for excuses or regret in any of it. I found myself at the border of the yard, once known as my sister's home. Now, the title bore a different owner. A measuring wheel balanced in my grip as I paced the boundary, watching the numbers increment. Every rotation signaled more than just feet and inches. To me, it symbolized something deeper, limits I'd had to define on my own, since no one had ever established any for me. Reaching the rear fence, I paused and took in the wide, quiet field stretched beyond the property. It was serene, undisturbed, a testament to all I had managed to reclaim. No, I never set the house ablaze. I hadn't evicted a soul. Instead, I offered terms and alternatives. I played by the book, keeping to structure even when others broke the rules, because I believed true power lay in maintaining order, not chaos. Still, I was given ownership of something without my consent. So I made no requests, simply claimed back all that was mine. Ultimately, my motivations weren't about the money. The money was never what truly mattered. The issue wasn't really the house itself. For me, it was finally about prioritizing myself, without apologizing, without drama, and without needing anyone's understanding. I turned back toward the street, keys in hand, as the sun slanted low across the yard. In that quiet moment, something settled within me. What I heard wasn't forgiveness or regret, but rather a gentle sense of peace. That home had been built on signatures taken without consent. I reclaimed it through stillness and staked my claim at the border by signing my own name.